What's up, guys? Today I want to make a video that is super important. This is, you are not going to be able to ever work properly in another 3D software coming from ZBrush if you don't know this. So I'm going to cover how to properly set up your scene scale, units, floor height, and export settings so that you can properly, have interplay with other 3D software. And in particular, I'm going to show later on how to set up GoZ. And if you don't know what GoZ is, I can demonstrate it real quick, but it's a bridge between ZBrush to other 3D software. In my case, I use Maya, but it also supports other software like Cinema 4D and 3ds Max. But at a click of a button, I can have a subtool selected. So in this case, we'll hide this female scan of a skeleton I have here in ZBrush, and we'll just send over the floor and the male skeleton. So we'll do GoZ visible, and what it's going to do is it's going to open up a new project in Maya which is linked to ZBrush. You got to give it a second, and here we go. Now my skeleton is here in Maya and the units are correct because my project file in ZBrush is set up correctly. And this plugin is super useful. I can't stand ZModeler, to be perfectly honest. So for me, I just use GoZ to, in a click of a button, send my model off to ZBrush, or not to ZBrush, to Maya, and then I do my poly modeling in Maya, and I do my UVs, I create selection sets, I can do whatever in Maya, start setting up blend shapes, and then I can send it back to ZBrush. So, I could come in here with my guy selected here in Maya, and with soft select, pull out a bump thing. With him selected again, you'll have to, when setting up GoZ, you're going to have to set up a custom shortcut for it, which shouldn't be too hard to figure out. I'm not going to show you how to do that, but just Google it. But I'm going to use the GoZ button here in Maya, and it's going to run the script, and it has now updated it in ZBrush. And I can come over here in ZBrush with my mask brush and mask the well, whatever, I was gonna transpose it, but I can just pull this guy out and then do GoZ, and he's updated in Maya. Oh, whoops. So it's a little bit finicky. Sometimes it will create a new subtool. So now it just created a new subtool. But now if I do GoZ with it selected, it'll update it instantly in Maya. So I'll go over how to make sure it doesn't happen later on. But as you can see, this is if you don't already know about this is a game changer. This will speed up your workflow exponentially. So I'm going to minimize Maya for a second. Let's get rid of this silly looking dude. So aside from working with GoZ, the benefit of having your scenes set up with proper units of measurement is, if you look at the names of my subtools, and as you saw in Maya, this corresponds to 1 unit of, or 1 meter in Maya space. And if you look up here at the top left, since I have my transpose line out, ZBrush is now set to centimeters. So what that lets me do is I can come here now and I can say, as I'm sculpting, the height of the head is 21 centimeters tall. Is that accurate for real life? And I can ask myself that, and I can compare. And now you can sculpt in ZBrush using real life measurements, which is super important. Obviously, it's important to also work with generic units sometimes if you are just comparing proportions. You don't need to do this when you're just sculpting, but when you are ready to work with other 3D software, it's a must-have. And something else, when you just so you know, as we're setting it up, when we set up the units properly, the brush sizes are perfectly fine. This is still a very comfortable brush size for the macro scale, for me to come in here and mask stuff out and T-pose stuff if I wanted to use the T-pose plugin. And as far as I can zoom in, you still have like insane brush brush sizes at this this size. You can still do extremely fine detailing. You can still do the eyes. You can do everything. So this is the ideal project setup for working on characters. So let's get into it. We're over here in Maya now. As you can see, my grid is set up, so each square here corresponds to 1 centimeter. If you needed to change the divisions of your grid, come up here to display grid, and then you can change the units there. If you need to change the actual units of your scene though, what you would want to do is you would want to come up here to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Settings, and then this is where you would change it. So if you're working with other people, if you're working with a studio, you're going to have a common metric. So it's important to know what that is. And the you know, as far as setting up your units here, this is going to be the same for all 3D software. You just want to make sure that you're establishing the floor of the software properly when you send it into ZBrush. So let's get started. Let's make a plane here, and then in the construction history of the primitive, we're just going to make this a 10 by 10 centimeter plane, and then we'll just add in a line of symmetry for ZBrush, and then we'll name this Maya underscore floor underscore 10 centimeters. We're not going to use the floor for anything as a part of establishing the units, but I just like to have it here. And then we're going to create a cube, and this is what we're going to use to establish the units. So again, in the construction history, let's come here and offset the baseline so it's snapped to the ground, and then come to height, and I'll make it 100. You can make it whatever as long as you know what the units are, so preferably in an increment of 10, but just remember what that is. And we'll rename this guy as well, underscore height 1 meter. Okay, so when we are ready to export, come up here, have both of these guys selected, and then export selection, and I already have some guys here made, but we'll overwrite this guy. And in your FBX export settings, you can disable the stuff you don't need. It shouldn't matter if you're using a default Maya project file, but I just disable the animation and camera exports because you don't need it. And then come down here to units and make sure that this is set correctly, and then axis conversion. This is important. So ZBrush uses Z up by default as the up axis, as opposed to Maya, which uses Y as the up axis. I don't know what other 3D software you use, but just set it properly. And when you are ready to go, just select export. Alright, we're back here in ZBrush now. So I've gone ahead and I've reverted to a project file using generic ZBrush units, so I'm kind of working alongside with what you might have. So come up here to Z plugin, FBX export import, and do import, and let's bring in that FBX we just made. So it'll make a new tool of our units, and yes, it's looking correct. So it might be a little bit hard to control your camera, so you might want to have local transformations on. So when you select a subtool, you can zoom in where you want to zoom in, and come up here with the height marker. Come here to Z plugin, and we're going to set our scale. So go to Scale Master, and we're going to want to set the units that we're using, in my case centimeters, and then set scene scale. So you're going to want to select the approximation here, which matches the measurements we made in Maya. So for me, I know this is a 10 by 100 by 100 volume mesh, so we're going to select that, and it has now set my units properly. So if I try to get my transpose line here, and I bring it down, as you'll see, now it's my units are correct in the scene. However, you might have an issue where your floor height is not correct. So as you'll see here, if I was to just append some more geometry down here, let's just bring this guy here. Oop. Yeah, got a sphere here. If we went to macros and then went snap to ground, you'll see it's snapping down here. So it's still this is the correct Maya height, and this is the ZBrush height. So what you would want to do here, go to that guy, is you're going to want to have your height indicator selected, and then you're going to want to go back to Skill Master, and you are going to want to do center subtools to world. And now it's going to properly set it up, and you're going to see now it actually moved. The floor is correct, but it doesn't look correct because it kind of shifted the subtools down. So you're just going to come back to these guys, and again you're going to want to go to macro, snap to ground, and it's going to snap these guys back where they should be. And now this is the correct Maya height. So at this point we now have a scene which is has the units set up correctly. So now what you would want to do to finalize things is come to your export settings, and you are going to want to make sure this is set to 10. So now when you if you make an FBX and you bring it into Maya, or if you were to use GoZ, the scale is going to match up correctly. And it's okay if it's okay if it turns into 9.999 whatever. It's just making it into a decimal. So you have now set it up properly. I would recommend making a, I don't usually work in ZProjects, but in cases like this where I've actually made changes to the units, I would recommend coming up here to File, Save As, and then we'll maybe doing this, Restore Config, so you're getting rid of unnecessary stuff, and then come up here to File, Save As, and then Save a New Project. And in my case, I kind of named mine just Maya default character, just Maya default. And then if you want to, you can come up here to Preferences Startup and save this to your config and make sure this is enabled. So now this will be your default project. So if you wanted to work with centimeters now, just have this be your startup file and then append subtools to this, and this can be the space that you work in ZBrush. Alright, so to conclude this video, I just want to talk about how not to break GoZ, because it is pretty foolproof. You know, if you've set up your project file correctly and you're not changing subtool names, there really shouldn't be any issues. But yeah, just don't change subtool names. If you ever come across issues with GoZ that just seem kind of wacky, you know, save your subtool and then delete it so you're not, you know, do delete all so you're not working in it, and then close that Maya project that's using GoZ, and then come back up here to Preferences GoZ and clear cache files. And that should resolve most strange issues that have to do with the link. As for using GoZ, this is imperative. Never spam these. You know, if you're frustrated, don't click these multiple times. Only ever click these buttons once, because what these do is it's queuing up the executable to run. So if you've clicked this 20 times because you're getting ticked off, well, as soon as you close Maya now, your task manager is going to get flooded with like 20 instances of Maya, and it's going to crash your computer. I know that because I've done that multiple times, so don't do it. As for why it was making a different subtool, I know I said I had an explanation earlier. I thought it was because of the export visible option, but it's not. So I would recommend just doing some research into that, and I'll search it as well. Other than that, I also wanted to mention, you couldn't see it because it's a separate window in Maya, but the GoZ plugin part of Maya will have a separate window that opens when you open Maya that it says update GoZ. So you don't need to be doing back forth. You could be sculpting in Maya, or you could be working in Maya and then send it to ZBrush and update in ZBrush whenever you want, or you could be, you know, doing them at the same time and just update it whenever you want by clicking the buttons. It doesn't, you know, you're not limited to using one or the other at any given moment. You can update them whenever. Okay, so hopefully this video helped someone, because this definitely was a big thing for me when I figured it out, and hopefully someone else is going to sculpt better because of this. So, see ya.